Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Space Game Junkie podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co-host, Spaz.
Hello.
Sadly, neither Jim nor Hunter could join us this week. Jim is having hardware issues, and Hunter's in the middle of a move, and we all know how horrible that is. I don't know about you guys, but I never want to move ever again. It's the worst. So we wish them well. But we do have a guest this week joining us from Redmond, Oregon, not Washington. Redmond, Oregon. Different Redmond. I just thought of that. I'm gonna try, Walter. Walter LaCroix. How was that?
Yep.
Is that good?
Close enough. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or as we Americans might say it, Walter LaCroix from Redmond, Oregon, to talk about what has really been, for us, one of the most pleasant surprises of 2017 so far, Starfleet Armada Rogue Adventures. Welcome, Walter.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, we are glad to have you because your game has kind of caught a lot of people by surprise. I remember when I first saw it, I was like, what is this? Where did this come from? So before we get into Starfleet, and that's Starfleet with two words, folks, just to be clear, because when I started playing this for my Let's Play, people thought I was playing the RTS from the mid-aughts, I think, or the early aughts. I'm like, no, Starfleet is two words. But we were touching upon the fact that you've been making games for quite a while. So let's go back to the beginning. I believe you said around 85 you started making games.
Yeah, which kind of gives my age away. But yeah, mid 80s, I got my first computer. I had never done programming or anything before that. Never even owned a computer, and I bought a Commodore 64 computer for $99. And loved it. And within 9 months of getting the computer, I wrote and had my first game published, which was pretty remarkable back then. So yeah, I loved it.
So now, how did you get a game published when was it through like a service like CompuServe that existed at the time? Is that how you got in touch with people, or?
Yeah, things have changed so much. Back then, what you had to do is you would create your own game. Then you would have to get a book that had phone numbers, addresses, contact information for publishers, game publishers, and that's how you would do it. Then you go through.
What's a book?
Yeah, they actually had books back then that had that information because you had no internet back then. I mean, it was not very far along, and there was just no other way to do it other than going either to a library and going through a book, or going and buying a book, which is what I did. I went and bought a book. It had a list of all the game publishers in there. I mean, I sent my first game to Electronic Arts, SSI, which was Strategic Simulations Incorporated, which was a big one back then.
I miss them every day. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I miss them every day.
Yeah. And
them and Microprose are the two I miss every day.
Yeah.
Sorry, please continue. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So yeah, I bought the computer, started making my first game, which was a boxing game. It's called Pro Boxing. It was basically two boxers made out of, back then, the Commodore 64 used sprites, and back then the resolution was 320 by 200. And you only had 8 colors to work with. And then you could also incorporate like background characters to make stuff as well. I mean, there was all kinds of tricks you could do, and you only had 64K to work with. So you didn't have a whole lot of memory to work with. So I, made the game, bought a book, sent it to about 5 or 6 publishers. Electronic Arts was one of them. SSI was one. And they all, rejected it. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm getting rejected left and right, which, happens a lot. So finally, I hadn't heard back from a company called Artworks. So I called them up and I introduced myself and said, hey, this is Walter LaCroix. I sent in a game to be reviewed. I was just calling to see, what you guys had thought about it. And she goes, well, Arthur wants to talk to you. And I go, oh my God, good. This is good news. So Arthur Walsh, who was the owner and the CEO of Artworks, basically said that they wanted to publish the game. It was going to be they were actually going to be putting 2 games on one disc, and they were going to market it that way with 2 games. So I was actually on the second side of another game as well, which is how my first game got started. Yeah.
Oh man.
So, and it was a low cost game. So I think the game was only like $5.99 or $4.99 for both games. So didn't make a ton of money, but that was my foot in the door. And then I ended up going on to write 4 or 5 more games for them. I did Hole-in-One Golf, which did pretty well. Then I did Daily Double Horse Racing. That was by far my best game. That got sold pretty well in the UK. It was basically a betting game with animated horses, and it got ported over to went from the Commodore 64 and went over to the Amiga, the Macintosh as well. So it got ported to a couple other ones as well. So
I found it here on Moby Games. My God.
Yeah. The only game I can't, and then I wrote another one called Beach Blanket Volleyball, which didn't do really well because it just didn't. Back then, the computer was so slow that trying to get a person to be able to control the person hitting the ball, it was just really kind of difficult. But it was kind of a cool game, anyways. But that's kind of how I got started in it, and I've been a gamer ever since. Playing lots of games and designing and programming them as well.
So when did the journey of Starfleet Armada begin?
Well, I've always loved the game. I had the original Star Control. I had Star Control 2 as well. I bought 3, and
we don't talk about 3. We don't talk.
Yeah, we won't talk about 3. Yeah.
There was no 3. There was no 3.
Yeah, it was a sad disappointment. Everything that made Star Control 2 good, which was the feeling like there was depth to the universe you were in. Things took a while to get there. They took that away. I mean, you could jump from one place to another just literally quick, and it just kind of made things feel real small. I don't know how you guys felt about it.
It had none of the charm of the first 2 games. None of it.
Agreed.
It was lacking. The gameplay was like they made it. It's like they tried to make it more simmy or something, so it was more complicated and yet nowhere near as fun. And the writing was just so flat, flat. I tried. I was so disappointed with that. Oh my God.
I think they spent too much time on the animatronics part of it because that was really the first game that used animatronics that way. And I think they just spent so much resource on that they didn't have anything left for anything else, I guess. So anyhow,
oh my God, you're probably not wrong. I forgot about that whole animatronics thing.
Yeah.
They made a big deal out of that. Oh God.
Yeah.
I've put a lot of that behind me. I blocked a lot of it out. Now I'm like, oh God, yeah, those. And there was another game at the time that kind of used some animatronic stuff called Millenia Altered Destinies, but it used it very sparingly, and it is actually a good game.
I never did play that game.
Oh, it's excellent. If you can track it down, it's a really unique game that just works right out of the box with DOSBox. If you can track down a cheap copy, it's really worth playing.
One other space game I'd like to see come out would be another Ascendancy. Have you ever played that game?
Yes.
We did a whole podcast. We brought another guy on who runs a 4X site, and we gushed about Ascendancy for 2 hours.
Yeah, I would love to see a second one of that. They put it over to, I think, mobile devices, but that was it.
And it doesn't even exist on those anymore. Apparently, it's been removed or something.
And it was a great game. So.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
So how got influenced? So basically, I've always been a big fan of Star Control 2. I wanted to make a game because it went so long without seeing a fourth one, you know, and with the flop of the third one, the interest was there, I knew, but I just didn't have the resources to do it. So back in 2004, I got my computer out and just started. Back then, of course, if you wanted to do graphics, you didn't use Word, you had to use Publisher because back then Microsoft Word didn't do that kind of stuff.
Oh God, Publisher,
so
right.
I started using Publisher, and I started creating, you know, stats and stuff for the game. I actually have hand-drawn drawings of about 25 or 30 of the races that I have in my game, because I named them all, and then I drew up, you know, just in a regular pencil what I thought they would look like. And I would still eventually like to get that information into the game with maybe another patch down the road when I can find someone that's willing to help me do some of these graphics. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it started off that, and then when I started making the game, I started the game, when was it, around 2013, I started programming it. I got a hold of a program called GameMaker. Now, you probably have heard of it by now.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what this is built in? GameMaker?
This is built with GameMaker. Now, GameMaker's kind of designed, it's really not designed for stuff like this, but you can do stuff like this. And I kind of tend to push the limits of the application that I'm using, because no one really tried to make anything like this where it's not like levels. That's most games made in GameMaker are made with level 1, level 2, level 3, and then you attach all these rooms together. And basically a room is a window that pops up, and you can have the window be there or not be there. You can switch between different rooms or windows. So, and I learned that really it works it works better than basic, because that's why I learned on basic, and basic is just too slow for what I want to do. When I started fooling around with how the collisions work and how fast everything moves with GameMaker, I realized that I could actually make my game. So in 2013, the middle of the year, I started taking my designs of the Star Control that I wanted to do, which I obviously couldn't call Star Control, and I actually started to make a game just like Star Control. The original melee battle was one ship versus one ship, and I had made an editor that would let you edit the ships. You could create, there was like 70 different stats that you could create different looks for the missiles, different looks for different sounds. You could attach sounds with certain things and make them do certain things. So I had basically all the weapons that were in Star Control 2, I had duplicated in my editor. And it was really cool. And the combat worked really well. It scrolled around, and it basically was like playing Star Control 2. But like I said, when I got about a year into that, and then Stardock made the mention of, oh, we just bought the rights for Star Control 2, I realized that I couldn't compete with them to make a game that's going to be just like Star Control 2. So I had to change my focus. So about 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago, I took what I had, made a save of it, so I had the original back. So if I ever want to go back, I can go back and, you know, make the other one if I want to. But I can completely change the way it works now, and I made it a smaller game where you actually get scores now. And that's kind of why I did what I did with the scoring and stuff. I wanted to make it a shorter game, and I didn't want it to compete with the new Star Control that's going to come out. So,
well, it's kind of fascinating what you have created. Now, folks, if you're not familiar with Starfleet Armada Rogue Adventures, basically, you're in a sector of space with a fleet, and your fleet is made of specific ships, which have specific abilities and a specific amount of crew, and your goal is to defeat a primary enemy that is at the center of the sector. And how you get there is entirely up to you, but you do need to work on getting resources to upgrade your ships and upgrade your stats. And there's a role-playing element to it. There's arcade elements to it. There's a lot going on here, man. There's a lot going on here. And you can land on planets. You can land on ships. You can land on starbases. You can fly around the sun. You can buy new ships. You can buy new ships. You can fly around the sun. You can find wormholes. There's so much in this game. It's kind of insane, actually, in the best way.
Equal parts insane and impressive, I must say.
Yeah.
I packed a lot of stuff in there.
You did.
You did. Yeah.
And the amazing thing is, folks, he keeps packing more stuff in there. Like, not a week goes by where there's at least one patch for this thing, which is, in this day and age, fairly impressive.
Yeah, I looked back, I printed up all my patches, and the game was version 11136. So the next patch that comes out is 11148.
Oh my God.
So I've had like 11 or 12 patches already. And a lot of them add new content. And I actually, during the podcast, I want to go over, with what each one I did, so you can kind of see how it's been evolving.
Oh, let's start. So the base game, okay, which is what folks, what you're seeing in the video, because I made the video shortly after the game came out.
You were the first person to actually make a video on it. So
oh, really? That. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Oh, yay!
You were the first video to come out. So
that's great. I'm very happy to hear that. I hope it sold a few copies.
Yeah.
But yeah, folks. Basically, what you're seeing on the video is the first release version of the game, which already had a ton of stuff. I mean, you choose a race, and they're all different in their own way, and you fly around planets. You get resources. You upgrade your ships with new weapons, and there's so much to do. But let's talk about what you've added since. You said you printed out the notes. Let's go through.
Yeah. So, and I'm only going to go over the patches where I actually added new content. There was a lot of patches that I had that just fixed errors, because like any other game, you're going to have, and I tried to hopefully reduce the amount of critical errors I had, and I had a few in the game that have got ironed out. So basically, the game was launched on the evening of the 5th, which was a Monday night at about 6 o'clock. So on the 7th, which was like a day and a half later, I had a patch, and that patch, what I added there is when you go to a research station, you can sell life forms. I added a sell all life form button, so you can sell all the life forms that you have. So that was something that somebody requested. They thought it would be cool, and I agreed. So I added that button. So that wasn't a big change, but it was only 2 days later. So, and then on June 11th, patch 11140, which was a couple patches in between, I added the game already had gamepad control, so I wanted to make the game as much compatible with people's playstyle. So I have mouse control, keyboard. I have a hybrid of keyboard and mouse combined, which I used to like playing until I got the gamepad going. And then there's the gamepad, which the gamepad used, you would move the stick left or right to rotate, and then you'd push it forward or back to go forward and backwards. Well, I had people say, well, I would rather have a directional one. So then I added a directional gamepad. So now you want the Planet Lander to move up to the right, you just move the stick in the direction you want the Planet Lander to go, and it goes. Same thing with your away team. So there's two gamepad modes, actually. There's the standard one, which is, I call it relative, and then there's the directional. So, and I guess people have been using the new Steam controller too, and they said it actually works pretty well with it. Once because the Steam controller is not really a gamepad per se. It basically maps out the buttons to be keystrokes or functions from a regular gamepad. So it's kind of a cool device, and I actually want to get one. So anyhow, so I added the gamepad control. So that was a big thing, because that took a little while to do, which is why it took me a couple extra days to get that out there. And then a small thing, when neutral races, you can either be friends with them, stay neutral, or you could attack them and then they dislike you, and then the rebels like you. So neutrals are kind of a thing where you could go one way or the other, depending on how you want to play it, or you can keep them neutral. Well, on the neutral starbase, part of the requirements required to go to a neutral starbase was a battle stat. That didn't really apply, because you can never attack a neutral starbase. It had to be one that was disliked or worse. So I took that stat out of there. So, but I kept it in with a neutral fleet, because a neutral fleet you could attack, but just not their starbase. And of course, once you attacked a fleet, then their starbase was no longer neutral. It was, now they disliked you, and then you could attack them. So, and then on June 16th, patch 4.1, I basically increased the turn rate and for ships, and also for fighter squads, I made them a little bit faster, and which also made their turn rate a lot better. So that was a small thing. And then patch 0.42 on June 17th, this one was a big one because, and you haven't played it since I added the movement path. So now when you're in a combat and you see your ships there, it actually has a line that shows you the direction that they're going to be moving. So if you told them to make a right turn, you'll see this circle arc around, and then it'll either keep on going circular or it'll go out straight. And that's for both your ships and the enemy ships. And it goes out about 500 pixels, so it goes out pretty far. But the enemies, you only see about 1/4 of their line, and I did that for a reason for upcoming content. And I'll get into that when I start going some of that stuff. So basically, you can now, when your lines are in green, the enemy ships are in red, and then there's buttons that you can toggle on and off for each of them. So you can turn your lines off or on, and then theirs off or on. So they can both be on, they can both be off, they could be one or the other. So it gives you some flexibility. I like using it with the paths because I like to see where I'm going. And then when you click on a ship to move it, the arc follows the mouse, so you can see exactly what your ship where it will go if you then left click to place it there. Because there was a lot of confusion with how do I move my ship, if I can even move the direction of my ship. People didn't know how to do it. So that was the big thing. And then also when you do the mass aim, you hit the button and then all the things point towards that one spot. So you can see all these. It's kind of cool to do that. You press the button, then you move the mouse over, and as you're moving it, all these lines are drawn from each of the ships to the mouse. So if you have 10 ships out there, there's 10 lines being drawn out, and it's kind of cool to watch that happen. But that's really useful in combat.
I've only done combat. I tend to try to avoid it, so I've only done it a few times, and I get my butt whooped every time.
But that won't happen anymore. So that's changed a lot. So yeah, combat is a lot different now. So
good. But
see, and then
sorry, go ahead.
The next 18th, go ahead.
No. Let's finish up the patch stuff that you've added, and we'll continue from there.
So, and then on the 17th or the 18th of June, I made some adjustments to the recharge time of some of the ship bays. It was taking too long, like the cargo ship, to use the repair drone. It just took too long to charge up, so I reduced that. I also added the ability to make your away team or planet lander move backwards, even if you're using the mouse or the directional gamepad. So there's actually a way to, with the mouse, I think it's hitting the space bar while you have the mouse pointed will make the planet lander move backwards.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to have that ability, especially if you're fighting, alien bioform and they're trying to attack you. So. And then on the 19th, this is cool, and you'll like this. When you would upgrade your ship, let's say you had a small battle cruiser and you had all these small level 1 bombs, and you upgraded your ship to level 2. Well, now once you do that, you can mouse over the bomb, and if it's a lower level than what your ship is, it'll allow you to pay GMUs to upgrade that to the next level. So that was a huge thing, because that made you no longer had to search for level 2 or level 3 stuff. You can take what you have and upgraded it to that level because you already have the level previous. And that just made a lot of sense, and a lot of people like that.
That's that's awesome.
Let's see. Yep, and that was the big thing of that one. So that and the cost to upgrade is about 150. It's 150% of the difference between the two. What the cost is. So it's a little more expensive to do that way versus just buying a level 2 item. So buying a level 1 and then upgrading it would cost you 50% more than if you were just to buy the level 2 outright. But at least you have that option, and the level 1s don't go to waste. You can keep your modules and bay items up to date with your ship a lot easier now, as long as you have the money to do it. Let's see, and then the other thing on the 21st, I had a lot of complaints about the people saying that they always pick the same 3 items. You'd always pick the radar for the plant lander because that's a given. You have to have that. Usually you get the armor for your away team because that helps your away team, and then you would pick one of the other ones. Well, people thought it was unfair because everyone picked the same thing and there was no reason to pick anything other than those. Well, now there is. So basically what I've done is each of those things that you can select now have a value from 0 to 4. The lower the value, the more better the item is, because that gives you no extra score bonus. So like if you pick the radar, it's a 0, which means you don't get any score bonus. If you pick something that has a value of 4, at the end of the game, you get a 4% increase in your total score. So if you were to pick 3 things that were all 4s and just grinded through it and played it that way, at the end of the game, instead of scoring 50,000 points, you would get 12% more. So there's now a reason why you might want to try picking different items to increase your score versus taking the same things over and over.
Oh, I see.
That's different.
It changes the meta a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it does. And there's some more things I want to do with that as well. When you would leave orbit from the planet, I got rid of the 3-second delay. The reason for that was that there was all the snow and the rain were particles, and I couldn't get the particles to disappear in time. They would actually show up on the second screen while I finally figured out how to do that. So once again, learning how to use Game Maker. So now there is no delay. As soon as you leave a planet, there's no 3-second countdown to leave. It leaves immediately. And let's see. You now can save your sound preferences. So if you set your sound for 50% on all 3 things differently, or whatever you do, each time you leave the game, it saves those stats, but it's not part of the saved game. So if you start a new game, it remembers what your sound things were, and I think it also remembers your what you picked for controls as well. And the combat encounters now start the battle at full speed, because there's really no reason not to have it at full speed. Because the faster you go with the comet, the slower it goes away from you, because you're actually tailing it. So the faster your speed, the more time you have to chop it down. And also with the comets now, which wasn't part of this patch, but was a part of a patch that I did after that, is now, in addition to getting the research units from the comets, if you shoot the debris, there's a small chance that it will give you crystals. So it's another way of getting the hard to find crystals that you would normally get from an asteroid field. And then I adjusted some of the speed slowdowns for some of the terrain, like moving over the cracks. It slowed you down way too much. So now it only slows you down by 15% versus I think what it was is 40%. So it makes going like on tundra planets that have a ton of cracks in them, you don't see your planet lander slowing down as much. So that was a good thing, I think, because a lot of people complained about that. Okay, and then the June 24th, patch 0.46, I increased the length of the nebula encounters by 5 seconds to enable people to have a little more time, because the nebulas seemed like the hardest one to get resources from, because things were kind of random where they showed up. But in addition to that, I also added a little static yellow charge that shows up 1 second prior to where that lightning's going to hit. So you can actually see these little sparks show up, and then 1 second later, lightning's going to hit there. So you can actually plan where to move and where to shoot now. And now you can probably get 3 or 4 times more resources than what you would normally have gotten from a nebula. So that was a big help, because a lot of people complained about that. And then on the screen where you're editing your fleet, I added a button that it basically says disperse crew as needed. So what it basically does is it takes the extra crew from a transport ship or a military, the fighter carrier, because both those holds a lot of crew, and it pushes them over to the battle cruisers first, and then to the cargo ship, and then to the research vessels. But it never takes more than 50% of what the maximum is for the transports or the fighter carrier. So it's a way of dispersing the crew to the ships in need without having to do the click, 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 click. So, and the planet landers now have auto fire. So just like the away team, the planet landers will fire as long as the button's down.
Nice. Nice.
Let's see. Oh, when you're in combat, there's actually a text that shows how many open slots you have. So when you're in battle and you want to, try to capture a ship, then you get the message, well, you have no spot for it. At least you'll know ahead of time because it actually says how many slots you have available in your fleet at the time of the battle.
Oh, right. That makes sense.
Yeah, and then I lowered the damage done by the chemical and the vaporizer bombs because they were just too big. I'm still doing some tweaks on the combat, but they just were too powerful. You could wipe out a ship pretty easily with those. I also added whether a ship device or a device module is stackable or not, because a lot of things that you would use, some can be stacked together and some items can't. So now when you mouse over any of the items at the very bottom, it'll tell you whether it's stackable or not stackable. And an item that's not stackable, you can still put more than one on your ship if you want to. The reason for doing that is that if you have two of one item and one gets disabled, you still have one then. So it's like having a backup in case someone hits you with a critical hit and disables one of your modules. So, and that's the biggest reason why bigger ships have 4, because you would normally never use 4 bay items in one battle. Typically, you probably use 2, maybe 3, but it's more of a, I have an extra one in case I get hit. Let's see, and the volume for the intro screen is now played at the volume of your preferences as well. So a person that would set their preferences down when they first log into the game and play it, it would be really loud. So now that's in tune with whatever they set for their preferences. Okay, then, you're still allowed to collect resources if your fleet cargo is full. It'll let you do it until your Planet Lander cargo is full. But then when you get back to your Planet Lander comes back to your fleet, you then have to decide what you want to put in the jettison chambers to get rid of. So you can stay down there as long as you can until your Planet Lander is actually full.
Huh.
See, and I increased the size of the armor and the crew gauges in the ship's list when you're in combat. They were really narrow. They were only like 3 pixels wide. So unless you were playing in full screen, it was kind of hard to see. So those are now, I think, 5 or 6 pixels wide. So then this one also had the big overlay. Now you're probably familiar with the thing where at the bottom where you could search for civilian outposts that have this item. Now there's actually another thing in the right hand corner, and it's an overlay of 8 specific things. And basically what it does is it puts an icon around the planet on the thing, so you can see whether there are, and let me go over exactly what they do. So the 8 things are whether or not you have discovered a planet. They'll put an icon on there if you've discovered it. Then it goes from discovered to visited, because you can't visit a planet until you've discovered it. So it'll be either discovered or visited or totally explored. So if you've explored everything in there, with the exception of the planets, so if you've gone through and you went to all the nebulas and all the comets and everything else, all the ships, the derelict ships, it's going to have an icon that says that thing has been totally explored. So you'll have those, and that's all kind of one button. Then the other things that it shows is where the wormholes are at and what color they are prior to making them into star lanes, because once they're a star lane, you can see the star lanes on the map anyways. There's an icon for the systems that have research units, whether it be from anomalies, comets, planets that have research units, gas planets. There's one that shows all the space stations and also has a secondary icon next to its icon to let you know what type of space station it is, like a $ if it's a commerce, a bunch of little ships if it's a ship factory. And then the other one is civilian outpost. There's a little icon for that. And then there's a button for hostiles. So any system that has pirates in it or a race that you're not neutral with. So basically the way it works is there's on the right hand side, there's a thing that lists all of them, and you can check them on or off. And if they're checked on, if that applies to that planet, there'll be an icon around the planet. So there could be as many as 6 icons all the way around each star system if they all apply to that. So it's kind of a way of seeing stuff without having to do the other. The other is great for like pinpointing exactly what you're looking for. Let's see, lowered the price for purchasing bombs for the battle cruisers. I'm still debating whether I want to make those a single-use item or whether I want to have them be, reusable. I've had people say both ways about that. So, and let's see. And that was a big patch. So that one's the end of that one, and I only got one more left here. So this is the one where it has to do with the combat balancing a little bit, where it shows when you're on the diplomacy screen, it now shows how quickly the other races are getting towards getting the bigger ships. So basically the gauges work like this. All the other races now only start with small ships, period. All they can do are small ships. Then they get to a certain star date, and that date's dependent upon the skill level you're playing at and that race's technology level, and whether they're your main enemy or not, and a little bit to what zone they're at too. So basically, they go from the gauge will be initially, it'll just say small ships, and then there'll be a gauge that says small, medium, and then there'll be a gauge that starts to go from the left to the right, and that's how close you are to getting to having the medium ships for the races, for that race. When it gets to the far right, they then unlock medium ships. The gauge will still say small to medium, but then to the left of that, it'll now say that they can build small and medium ships. And then that gauge becomes a gauge as to what percentage of the ships that you see will be small versus medium. And that gauge continues to fill up until it gets to large. And then the same thing happens. It flips over from large to huge. And then you get to a point at the end of the game where the other ships are huge once they get past a certain star date. And then the gauge goes away once they've got all huge ships. So it's kind of a way of knowing where the other races are at and getting to the next level as far as the size of their ships. And that was actually kind of a big patch. And that one I just did not too long ago. And that's it for what's in it now. And then I got the one patch I'm working on now. I don't know if you want to know information about that or not.
Of course.
But this one, this is the one that's going to add. Right now, the battle cruisers have like 6, 7, 8 different types of bombs that they can use, and all the other ships have just one item. It's either for the cargo ship, it's a repair drone. It's a research drone for the research vessel, which really doesn't do any good combat-wise, but what it does do is it lets you get extra research, of course. Then you can steal research from the other ships. So each one only has one. Well, now they're all getting the second one. So the cargo ships are going to be getting a charged drone. Now, what that will do is it will immediately send a drone out to one of your friendly ships, and it will, and all these have 4 levels like all the rest. There's a level 1, 2, 3, and 4 of each of these. At level 1, it will immediately give each the weapons and the bay item an extra 10% boost in its charge. So if it's currently at 25%, it would now be at 35%. And those percentages go up with the level of the drone. So it goes from 10% to 20% to 30% to 40%. So a level 4 charged drone will give both of your weapons and your bay item a 40% boost, which is pretty good. It's almost half. So if they're getting close to being charged up, it could immediately charge them up, and then you can then immediately fire them. So it becomes a little more of a offensive threat versus a defensive by using the research drone or the repair drone. So it kind of gives the cargo ships a different feel for what they can do now. Now the science vessel, which basically didn't do anything for combat, now they're going to be getting a virus probe. Now what that does is it will randomly infect one of their 2 weapons. They're either their long or their short range, and it will immediately set the recharge back to 0. So if they have 2 weapons that are almost charged up, well, then you fire a virus on it, and one of those weapons are going to go down to 0. And then at higher levels, at level 1, it's going to affect just one weapon. At level 2, it still only affects one weapon, but you also have a chance of it affecting their bay item. At level 3, it still only affects one weapon, but it has a really good chance of affecting it does affect their bay item. And then at level 4, it has a chance of also negating any special ability that they have going on at that particular time, except for cloak, because obviously if they're cloaked, you can't fire at them. So it kind of gives science vessels a kind of a cool, difference of what they can do compared to just being I'm just going to sit back and not do anything and try to collect research units, because they really had no impact on the battle. And the transport ship is going to get a shield generator. So basically you can create a shield generator on a friendly ship, and it will basically create a shield around that ship for either 2, 3, 4, or 5 seconds. And that shield will protect the ship from the next hit, and it'll give it no damage. But then once it's hit, the shield goes away. The exception to that is a critical hit. A critical hit will destroy the shield, but will only do regular damage. So it kind of negates the critical part of the critical hit. So you just take normal damage. So that's kind of important. You use that with some other things, you can make a ship, pretty, unstoppable with that. And then the last is the fighter carrier. So the fighter carrier is now going to have the ability to launch a missile barrage. So all the other weapons are instantaneous. You would use the weapon and it would complete the outcome of what you just did. This works like the fighter squad. You launch the missiles, they're going to be probably 2 to 3 times faster than the fighter squad, so they're going to go fast, but you can target them. You can move them just like you would, at any point. They're basically guided missiles, and they do damage. They'll do 10, 20, 30, or 40 damage once it hits an enemy ship. And you don't really target the ship. It will, as soon as it makes contact with an enemy ship, it will blow up. So it's kind of a cool thing, but they only have one armor, so any hit on them will destroy them. But later on, you're going to have ways of actually being able to put shields on them as well. But that's down the road, in probably 3-4 months down the road, with some DLC that I'm looking at bringing out. And all the DLC that I'm going to have, I don't believe I'm going to be charging for. I think it's going to be part of the game. And that's it. Oh, also, what's added is when you're on the screen to start a new game and you mouse over the skill levels, it now tells you what that skill level will start you at, as far as how many ships you start with, what type of ships, what level the races start at, how many of this you have, how many of that you have. So it lists 13 different things so you have an idea of how you're going to start the game before you start the game. And that was kind of one of the things that was kind of missing. And then the last thing is that all fighter squads that are launched will launch with a shield. Same thing, one hit destroys it. A critical hit takes normal damage, just like the shield that the transport ship gives. Yeah. So all fighters launch with that. So fighters become a little bit more important in the game, because before they could take one hit and they'd be gone. Now they're going to at least take 2 hits before they're destroyed. So the fighter squads are going to become a little bit more important. And I also up their damage that they do a little bit as well. And that's it. That's the next patch that I'm working on.
So many quality of life improvements.
Okay. So I could barely keep track of the things you were saying. I can barely keep track of what I'm wearing or doing from one moment. How do you keep track of all of these variables that go into all of these moving parts? Do you have a Bible, flowcharts? I mean, how do you?
I'm not going to tell you that I put it in my brain, because I don't put it in my brain. I have everything. Every patch that I'm doing, I keep a record of it, so I know what I've been doing and exactly when I did it. But then when I start something, I make notes in there. Like I had started this patch like a week ago, and then I had 2 critical errors that were happening that I had to fix because they would happen a lot. It happened anytime you'd start a game in difficult or insanely hard, it would cause a crash every time. So I had to get that fixed. So I had to do an emergency patch, which means I kind of had to backpedal a little bit on what I had been doing. So it kind of made it difficult, but that doesn't usually happen. I usually don't do like big chunks and then have to revert back to doing something small in the middle of doing a big update. So, but yeah, it's difficult to keep track. I just have to, I write a lot of stuff down. I put a lot of stuff on my computer to keep track of, and I put a lot of comments in my code. So, and the code can be placed pretty well as far as, with GameMaker, you create trees and stuff, and you can put them in directories. So everything is really, I word everything really well, so I know what it is, and I put it in where I think it belongs, so I can find it later. So.
Well, I mean, you've done such an impressive job, and there's so much going on in this game. But one thing I wanted to say that's really impressive, Spaz and I have talked about this a lot. The game has an over 100-page manual, which is also kind of a throwback to those olden days of gaming. Seriously, folks, not only is the tutorial like hours long in a good way, it like takes you through the game and holds your hand a little bit, but not too much. You know, I wanted to say that's also really nice. But the fact that you have such a dense manual is just amazing. So, folks, this is not a difficult. You might be watching the video and going, "Oh God, there's so much there." But you have. Here's what I love: you have not only a manual, and you have a tutorial. You have tooltips for everything. Can I just say how much I love that? Seriously?
Yes.
Because I'm something of a UI nut, and I love tooltips. I love.
Me too.
love tooltips. And folks, seriously, he's got not only a tooltip for everything, but like there's a help little, like, if I remember correctly, there's a question mark that like helps explain every screen you come across in the game. So like, did that take up a ton? That must have taken up a ton of time to put all that together, because it's a lot of writing.
Yeah, I did that, near the end, obviously, because and right now a lot of that stuff's outdated to a certain point because I've added so much new content that the tutorial doesn't go over a lot of things I've added. So it's like, and I've been trying to keep it up to date, but it's like I just can't keep up. So
yeah, that's fair. Now let's talk about the different what would you call them? Modules, game modes, mini games? What would you call these varied activities you do in the game?
I just call them encounters.
Okay.
For lack of a better word. I mean, it's an encounter of some type, so, that's what I call them, encounters. So.
Okay, well, there are what, about a half a dozen different types, maybe almost a dozen, because
there's about a dozen.
Because let's see, you can land on. This is the most Starflighty part of the game to me, is the Planetary Landing. To me,
yeah, I love that part.
I love it too. I gotta say, I love it too. So much. I want to land on every planet I can just to do that. So there's the Planetary Landing part, but there's also the finding a wormhole part encounter. There's the Nebula encounter. There's the asteroid field encounter. There's the sun encounter. God, what else is there? Comet. God, right. Comets.
Derelict ships.
Derelict ships. And distress ships. There's multiple types of ships. Derelicts, distress ships, where you can get. I think it's distress ships that you can actually get crew from.
You get crew for both. The difference between the two is that a distress ship is being attacked by an invader, and a damaged ship needs to be repaired. So damaged ships will always require you to immediately use your fire extinguisher and then your toolbox, because there's not going to be any aliens on there. A distress ship means, hey, we're being invaded by an alien. Please help us. And they both give you crew typically.
Oh, okay.
But and there's like 8 different types of those type of ships, and some of them give you different things. Like if it's a research vessel, you'll get research. If it's a cargo ship, you're going to get probably some cargo
and
items.
Some vessels have multiple levels. You cruel
Yeah,
son
levels,
of a gun. Oh my god.
That could be insane if you got like 6 fires going on at once.
Yeah. I had to deal with that once. There was like one level had 2 fires, and the other level, like, things were breaking and about to turn on fire.
Yeah.
So
the trick of that, just so everyone knows, is that all the stuff that's happening on a level that you're not on happens at about one third, 1/4 the speed at the current position that you're at. So if you're on the lowest level, don't go back and forth between levels, because then everything will start to go quicker. Stay at one level, clear out all the stuff, put out all the fires, fix all the stuff, then go to the other level, and then by that time they will have taken some damage, but not as much, because everything goes slower on the level that you're not currently on. So
it's good to know.
Yeah, I did not know that. That is very, very good to know. So that's what, 8, 9 right there? And that's not counting the combat or the stations.
Yeah, you got six space stations, which all have different things that they offer. They all sell certain things, but they all have a purpose. So
yeah, and every one of these modes, my friends, can get you something that you need, whether it's materials from a planet, science from a nebula or a sun, or gases. Yeah, it'll always get you something you need to do an upgrade or upgrade your stats. And so they're all
even indirectly.
Doing.
Yeah, because you can find these energy spikes on planets, and you go and explore, and maybe you'll find some ruins with an artifact or two.
Which is
and
an
you
old
can
space
trade
shuttle.
those in.
I love that some of the ruins are like old space shuttles.
Yeah.
I just love that.
Yeah.
And there's going to be another one coming soon. So.
But another thing I wanted to say about usability, besides the tooltips, is you have like 4 control methods, which is really nice, because giving users choice is always a good thing. Yep. But you have all these other little nice touches that I love. Like, one of my favorite things, it's a small thing, but one of my favorite things is when you're on a planet and you have these different, like, up to, 8 or 9 different landing zones you can be at, you can go to on a planet. You can just hit number 1 to go to that one. Then when you're done with that one, you just hit 2 to go to that one. You don't have to go back and forth to the ship if you don't want to, if you still have room. It's just...
You want another trick of the planet exploration?
Yeah.
So you know how you go to a planet and there'd be like 7 or 8 research nodes?
Yeah.
You want to go one right after another? Go to the top one, the very top one, clear it out, and once you clear it out, you can hit the left mouse button, and instead of firing, it will take you to the next node.
What?
So, yeah, that I added in one of the patches, and that a lot of people don't realize that you can do that. So whenever the area is clear, the left mouse button no longer fires. It takes you to the next node in the list.
For God's sakes.
Yeah. That works with
much
the gamepad
quality
or the mouse. And that's really useful, because you can just zip right through them all.
Oh my God, dude.
Yeah.
I love that.
You don't have to put your key it all down.
Oh my God. No, that is great, because, I mean, that's just another little quality of life UI thing that, like, a lot of people a lot of bigger games don't even think of little things like that.
Yeah.
Oh.
I like to make things convenient, because when I'm playing a game, I want to play it as efficiently as possible, and that's just what I like to do.
So you said you worked on this for what, about 4 years?
Yeah, the last part where I kind of changed it from being more of a Star Control 2 clone to being what it is, probably about 2.5 to 3 years. Yeah.
And I've noticed that the community on Steam has been pretty positive toward the game. Have you been finding that they've been very helpful in finding bugs and suggesting fixes and stuff like that?
Yep, and being patient. Of course, I fix things really quick. The bad part of that is sometimes I rush to get something out and I break something else, and that happened twice. It's like, oh crap. So at one point I had to backtrack and go back to the previous version. Well, I could fix the other thing, and it took me like a week to fix it. So I actually went from version 0.46 or 0.47. I had to go back one. So
But
that happens.
Gamers are a finicky lot, us folk. But the thing is, if you make a good faith effort to try and fix your shit, and you're transparent about it, we can be the most patient bastards on the planet, as long as we know stuff is being fixed.
Yeah.
And so,
and looking at the patch notes, it's obvious that
exactly.
It's obvious to anyone who just looks at the patch notes, all those announcements. Yeah, I see right now 8 positive reviews, none negative on Steam. So yeah, that shows.
Sadly, there's not enough yet to give you like a mostly positive rating. It doesn't look like. But
I think you have to be on there 2 months.
Oh, really?
Days.
It's not. It's not an amount of review thing. It's a timing thing.
It's a timing, yeah.
That's interesting. I
read that somewhere. I was looking over and it says, after 60 days, it'll start telling you, Yeah, so it's 60 days.
And you know what's nice? There's a plugin called Enhanced Steam. I don't know if you've heard of it. It will tell you when you go to a Steam page. It adds a lot of things to a Steam page, like link to SteamDB and a bunch of very useful things. But one thing it does is it tells you when the last database update to the game was made. Basically, when the last time the game was patched. And so you get a clear indication, like, oh, this game was patched. Like right now, I just looked at your page 2 days ago. That's great. Yeah. And then you go to some other games. This game was last patched 1,176 days ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, maybe I don't want this game. Maybe it's been abandoned.
Yeah. It's irritating to buy a game and then not see the developer do anything to, improve it.
Exactly.
Because games aren't like they were before. Back in the 80s, when you made a game, if you had a bug in the game, that bug was in that game forever. It's just it's the way the game was.
I think the first game I ever got with a patch was Red Baron, and I think you had to specifically write into Sierra, and the only way you knew about the patch is if you registered the game. Remember, you had to do that with a little postcard.
Yep. That's why you did that, because you wanted to get updates. Yeah.
And then they'd either like mail you a thing like, "Do you want this patch with a floppy?" And like, "Yes, I do," or they would just like. I think I had to mail in for a floppy to be mailed back to me. I think.
Yeah.
And so I think that was the first game that ever I got a patch for. What was that, 89? 88? When the hell was Red Baron? Oh my god. It was like 80-something. Late 80-something. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I mean, now, does Steam make it easy to patch the game? I've heard mixed about.
Oh yeah. If I just have to make like a small change, like a text change, it takes me within an hour. I can have the change done, upload it. I always make it active on the beta first, because my account is set up for the beta. I test it in the beta, and then I just go into the Steam website, the SDK Software Developers Kit website, and just say, okay, I want to make this build active for live, or they call it default. There's default and beta. So I make it live for beta first, test it on my end, and then I make it live for the other. So it's really easy. Then you can go back. Like I said, I had to go back that one time. I just went back to the previous build and made that the default. So it actually went back a step. So it keeps,
No, that's really efficient. Now, I just thought of something, because I get a lot of press keys, and a lot of them say something for beta testing. And does that mean that I would also have access to that beta branch as a beta tester? Is that
if you go into you know how to set change the settings on the game. You should see beta branch there available.
Oh my gosh.
But see if you do, and if you do, you can always do the beta. But the beta is usually, if you want to try it out, you can. But I always like to test it out myself first, make sure there's no bugs. But if you're comfortable with having the beta version, which could have a bug in it, because it's obviously not on live for a reason. But yeah, you could do that. You could set it for that. You can see what I'm working on.
That's pretty awesome, actually. So, remind me, how many races are in this game?
There's 45 races currently.
Currently. We'll get to.
It seems like you have more planned, huh?
Yeah, currently.
I got 3 things planned. I don't know if you're ready to dive into those.
Not yet. I want to talk about the current game, but because each race has a different ship with different capabilities, and So how much work did it take to come up with all these different varied races? Like what would you say took the most time? Was it coming up with all the variables? Was it making the encounters? Was it making all the races? Because there's so many races with so many
graphics are the hardest.
Really?
Because I'm not a graphic artist, it's just hard. Yeah.
Well,
but,
the graphics are just fine, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's for I had a lot of people say, well, the graphics aren't really that good, but it's not a $39, $49, or $59 game.
It's a $10 game. It's a $10 game.
Look at Stardew Valley. Look at its graphics. Are you going to tell me that my game doesn't have better graphics than that?
Hey, which one?
It's Stardew Valley. Have you ever played that?
Oh, Stardew Valley.
It's like one pixel, one square of the game is like 4x4 pixels. It's huge. It's chunky, but it's pixelated is what it is. So, so my game's kind of in between the old style, the 8-bit, and the newer stuff. It's the best I could do with doing everything on my own without being a graphic artist. So,
I mean, the benefit of the benefit of the more simple, we'll use the word simple graphics. One, it adds to the nostalgia because it kind of looks like those older games. But another thing that I think is very beneficial from a usability standpoint is because the graphics are simple and everything is very easily discernible. Everything is easily readable. Everything's easily discernible. You can see everything in just a few clicks or at a glance. So I got no problem with the graphics, like, at all.
Good.
It's about the gameplay, stupid. That's my motto. And this thing has gameplay in chunks. So now that we've gotten that, and I did want to ask one more thing. You have like kind of a leveling system, like kind of an RPG leveling system.
Yeah. So I was saying the original game that I started, there was a big universe and it was always random, and there was all 45 races available at the beginning, and it would pick like 17, 18 randomly. Then when I made the change to go to what I perceived as a better fit for what I wanted to do, which is what the current game is, where you've got these small games that don't take as long. I looked at my races and I'm going, well, how do I want to incorporate this to make it so that I can get longer playability out of the game? So why would a person want to keep on playing the game if they've already seen this race already, early on? So I thought, well, I'll stair step them, because originally all the races had the same amount of stat values as far as, they were all random, but they all had, 40 different values that they had, or points that they had to work with. And I would randomly put them in, weapons, shields, and so forth. And each one would up each one a certain amount. So that's why, like with shields either 0, 7, 14, 21, or 28, because each point value towards shields gives you a 7% increase. So as you go up in races, the bottom races have like just 10 points. You get to a level 9 race, they have like 40 points. So they are considerably better, but the steps in between are not that big where it makes it difficult to get there. And the other thing I want to point out that a lot of people have a misconception about is that to unlock a race in that tree, you don't need to defeat that race as the enemy. All you have to do is to defeat that race's Starbase, period. So they could be just a regular race in the game. So if you played a game, your first game, played as one of the top level 1 races, then selected all 5 of the level 2 as the ones you want to play against, because there's a way that you can uncheck ones from being selected as random. And people don't realize that as well. You can right mouse button click on the thing, and it will actually uncheck it so that will not be used as a random race. So there's a way of pinpointing which races you want or don't want as part of the randomness, the random races selected. So if you have all 5 of those races and they all happen to be neutral or worse against you, you could conceivably in the first game unlock the first level by beating the main enemy and then the other 4 as hostile races in the first game.
Oh my God.
So that kind of changes things, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It makes it a lot easier to get there. And then once you unlock that one, then you can always play as a race that you defeated. But then once you unlock all 5, you then can play against the next level up. So you go from being able to play against level 2 to the level 3 ones. And then what happens is part of your score is based upon the level difference between the race that you're playing as and the race that you're playing against as the main enemy. So if you unlock a level 9 and you want to play as a level 1 race versus a level 9 race at insanely hard, you've just made the game way harder, because you now are playing with a ship that only has 10 stats versus a ship that has 40 stats, and you're playing at the insanely hard level. So there's other things that you can do to make the game harder for you without changing the skill level.
That's pretty insane and pretty awesome. So now that we've talked about all that, let's get to the nitty gritty of what's coming next, because you've mentioned a few times that you want to talk about it, so I can tell you're chomping at the bit to tell us what's coming next. So just hit us with it.
Yeah. So once I get the thing I'm working on now done, which is probably gonna take another week or so, I've already done part of the work, but these were originally going to be DLCs, and I kind of named them, but like I said, I'm just going to put them in as regular content. And whether I make them as a DLC that's free, where a person can decide whether they want to play with it or not, I'm not sure I want to do that, but I haven't decided yet. So the first one, it was called Planets Plus, and basically what it is it introduces this race called the Rift Riders, and basically what they did is they would ride the rifts in time space to move around the universe to get places really quick. And what they did is they had these really cool relics that were real powerful that they've hidden in caves on planets. So basically what's going to happen is you're going to go to a planet, and if you see one of these caves, you can then go take your planet lander to the cave. And when you do that, you then go to a new screen, and you now are using your away team for another thing besides just doing the ships. You now use your away team in either 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, depending upon your how big your away team is, and then they can explore the cave. And inside the cave, there's going to be things that you can pick up, but you're going to find pieces of blueprints for these awesome relics that will do certain things. And each relic will have 3 pieces of the blueprints that you have to pick up. Piece 1, piece 2, piece 3. Once you have all 3, you combine them together, and then you have to use resources, which will probably involve metal and probably some extract, maybe some power crystals, to actually create that object. And right now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 relics done, and I want to have about 21 when everything's all said and done. But during one game, you'll never see more than 3 or 4 relics at a time. So I'm thinking of maybe doing 4, which would give you 12 different caves, because each cave I may do more than that, because I'm thinking of putting more than one piece in a cave. So I may put 2 or 3 pieces in a cave of different, not the same artifact, but pieces of different artifacts, so that you can kind of start getting, and as you move down to the zones, there'll be more and more caves. So there'll be some caves in the easier ones as well as the later ones as well. And do you want to know what some of the relics are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
So the first one, these two are kind of hand in hand. There's a side flank relic and a rear flank relic. Basically what it does is whatever damage that your ship would normally take, let's say a person is shooting you at 25% rear flank, it would only be 12.5%. It would half whatever they would normally do against you. And that the side flank would affect a side flank, and the rear flank would affect the rear flank. Now, one thing I didn't mention in one of the previous things is I changed the amount of the side flank to be not as big. So from the front, you have to get further over to the side before you get to a side flank. Because I had a lot of people complaining, well, it was too easy to side flank somebody. So those are the first 2 relics. Then there's a ship upgrade relic. So basically what this does is that when you're upgrading a ship to a larger size, you have a 25% chance that each bay item, whether it be a bay item or a ship device, has a 25% chance of being upgraded as well. So if you have 1 in each slot, you have a chance of that being upgraded at no cost. There's the battle radar sensor relic. This allows you, when you're in the combat mode, to see the entire path of the enemy ship. So now you can see all 500 pixels instead of only 125 pixels. So you can see exactly where they're going to go, not just where they're starting to go. It's not a big thing, but it'll give you an idea of where their final intention of being is at. Because if they have it only shows like the first 100 pixels, you can't always tell. You can see where they're starting to turn, but you don't know whether they're going to start to go straight or continue to turn. So this gives you the same length as your lines. Their lines become the same length. Then there's the weapon overcharge relic. What this will do is when a weapon becomes charged, like let's say you have a ship that's near the back and it's all charged up, but it's not even close to being in range. From the aim menu, there's going to be a thing for that weapon to, if you haven't used this relic yet, or it's not being used, because you can use as many times as you want, but it can only be used once at a time. You can then flag that particular weapon to go into overcharge, and when it does, it keeps charging. So once it'll keep on charging. So when you use it, you'll get that percentage of the damage. So if it's charged at 175%, you're going to get 75% more damage out of that weapon. So it's a way of getting more, damage out of a weapon that normally may not do a lot of damage because it's already in the back. It's out of range. It's fully charged. You're just wasting charge time. So you put it into overcharge. But you can only have one weapon in overcharge at a time, for your entire fleet. So you have to kind of be careful when you do that. Then the other one is the Planet Lander weapon scope. So this allows you to actually shoot your Planet Lander through obstacles. So you can shoot through rocks. Right now, rocks have like an 80% chance of stopping your shot. Trees have like a 60% chance. So you can shoot through all the obstacles. Then you're going to have a crystal extract converter. This will allow you to convert like 2 common into one rare, 2 rare into 1 exotic, but they have to be the same type. So like 2 crystals or 2 gas extracts. So it's a way of converting what you have into what you really need of that particular type. And you can also convert it the other way as well. You can go from 1 rare to 2 exotic, 1 exotic to 2 common, and go back the other way as well. Then the Planet Lander toxic shield. In addition to the fires and all that stuff, some planets have toxic clouds, which a lot of people didn't realize. So it doesn't do a lot of damage, but you would go over a cloud and your Planet Lander would get that sound, and you'd have that yellow thing around your Planet Lander letting you know that you're taking damage. With this toxic shield, those don't do any damage at all. And then the Planet Lander bio transport cage. So what this does is it allows you to transport life forms with your Planet Lander without having to stun them first. And what's coming up soon too is that you're going to have the ability that once you stun a life form, you can actually pick it up with your Planet Lander. You don't need to transport it. If you transport a stunned animal, it will go to your fleet. So it's a way of getting life forms without taking up any more space in your cargo. If your cargo is full, you could still get more and just send them to your your fleet. But with this, it's going to allow you to instead of having to stun the life form first, especially if you're doing like the Snow Pegasus is real fast, or the spastic Kumaxter, it's really fast and does a lot of damage. With this device, you could use the transporter, hit it with a transporter once, and it'll transport that animal into your Planet Lander inside the cage. So it becomes very, very useful. Then there's the repair drone concentrator relic. What this will allow you to do is it will allow you to use the repair drones on your fighter squads. Because right now you can't do that. And a lot of people keep saying, well, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Well, it's because I want to add more content that will allow you to do that. That's why you can't do it right now. So you got to leave things that can be done later without giving everything out all at once.
That's fair.
Then there's going to be
got to keep excitement going.
Yeah, exactly. Then there's the ship duplicator. So this will allow you to, using resources, which will probably include using metals and extract of some kind, you'll be able to duplicate any module that's in your on a ship or in your inventory. So if you have a bomb that you wanted to get more of, you can just duplicate them if you have enough resources. And then we have the missile barrage shield. This will allow your missiles to launch just like the fighter squads with a shield. So I kind of alluded to that earlier. So this is going to be a relic. And that's all the relics I have so far. I'm probably about halfway done with the relics. That's going to be the next thing I do. Then after that, I'm probably going to go to, I have two more things. The one I'm going to go to next is probably going to be the monsters and meteors. What that's going to do is I'm going to add these special monsters that show up in a star system, and it'll be like one of them is called Electromagneto. It's basically a lightning blob that you'll see, and when you go into contact, it'll be a regular fleet combat, but instead of against ships, you would be against this one big monster. So it's kind of like a big boss, and each of these are going to have different types of weapons that you haven't seen before. Like the Electromagneto will fire lightning bolts that will basically cause damage to your ship, and also will have a chance to reset the counters on your weapons or your bay items, which would really kind of suck. The Ionic will fire ion burst. There's going to be a plasmanoid that will fire plasma clouds. There's going to be a creature called the Paramite, which is basically a pyramid mechanical robot that it'll fire damage drones at you that will continue to do damage on your ships unless they're destroyed. Yeah, and then it can use these repair drones to heal itself as well. So it's kind of like a really bad robotic type creature that you probably don't want to get in contact with. Then there's one called the Octo, which is going to be an 8-armed creature that will fire a black gooey substance. I haven't figured out exactly what the effect will be, but it's going to be like a big octopus out in space. Salandro will be a cylinder-shaped creature that's going to fire these crystal shards at you. Once again, I haven't figured out exactly what it will do as well as far as damage. The Replicator. This one is really cool because it has the ability to replicate itself and make a copy of itself at 50% of its current health. So if you don't get it down in health, and it can do it every so often. I don't know exactly how long it will take, but it'll be able to replicate another one of itself, and there'll be 2 of them then, and then there could be 3 of them, and then they all could replicate each other. So you have to really hit them down quickly before they start replicating too many times. Then the Multi-Dim, which is a multi-dimensional creature. Basically what it does is, in addition to itself, it's going to project 2 other images of itself, and you don't know which one is which. So if you fire at one and it's not it will just go right through it, and it will do no damage. Once you hit it and you find out where it's at, it will stay there until it uses its special ability, which will be to move again. So you'll have to do the same thing, try to figure out which one is which. And the last one's called it's an energy ball. It'll use basically if you hit it with a kinetic weapon, then it makes it grow. So if you have a fleet that has nothing but kinetic weapons, you're pretty much screwed. You have to be using a lot of bombs on it. You'll probably be using it would not be a good thing. So, and that's kind of what I've got planned for that. But that's down the road. And then the last thing that I'll be adding is going to be called Elite Enemies. So basically what it does is each level of the races, like level 1, level 2, level 3, once you've opened that up, each one of those boxes, so there'll be 9 totally, will have an elite race that you can battle against that will be about 25 to 35% stronger than any of the other ones in that particular level. So it will also give you a bonus towards your score for playing against this race. You can never play as them, and they will never show up as a race other than your main enemy. So it's kind of like an elite, enemy to try to fight against, and they'll have, increased stats and they'll just be all out nasty to play against. But that's the last thing. And those are the things I've kind of have planned in the next probably 6 months or so.
And then what?
Then I've got. I've always been working on different games. I never stay on one game for a long time. This is the longest I've been on one game without actually kind of doing other stuff. I started doing a curling game after the last Winter Olympics, which has been almost 4 years ago. So I don't know if you're familiar with curling.
Yeah, the thing that you slide
Yeah,
slide a thing
exactly.
across the ice.
Yeah.
And you have to
So
be
I made a curling
yeah.
game, which actually is pretty far along. With the Winter Olympics coming in February of next year, I'm debating whether I want to try to get that done in time for the Winter Olympics, or I've been working on another idea of one of my favorite games that most recently is Civilization 5 and 6 and XCOM 2. When have you guys played the one? Probably have.
I have.
Okay.
I haven't played 6.
Okay. Well, XCOM 2, I started playing Long War, which I really like because it stretches the game out. But one thing that makes it difficult is that the combats can take a long time. So, you know, everything moves really, really slow. So I'm kind of leaning towards making a XCOM-ish type game, but changing a lot of things up. Still have the thing where you send out, you know, your guys, and you still have to, you know, make their stats better and do stuff. But instead of doing like the type of battle that they do, I want to kind of do, and no one's ever done this, I want to do like a different type. It's a kind of a hexagon battle with matching hexes, but it's not the same. And I've kind of drawn it all out, and it's really kind of hard to describe, but it would be a way of making the part of the battle between the two different squads go a lot faster, because some of those battles in XCOM 2 take a long time to play out, in you know, 30, 40, 50 minutes, an hour. And it's like, man, and I've got 4 more queued up to be played still that are going to be coming up. So I've been tinkering with that idea. So anyhow,
that all sounds really awesome, dude. No, that sounds great. Well, do you think there might be, this will be my last question, do you think there might be a sequel? I mean, you have a lot of content planned for this one, but do you think there might be another one down the road?
Yeah, if I did, I would probably maybe make it a little more storylined. One thing that's different about the one I was going to do versus the original Star Control 2 is that while it kind of had a story, each time you played it was different. So it was kind of like the races. The races would have you little. Basically, the way it was is that your reputation was all varied, but by doing things you could alter that, and you could get races to like you and some that didn't like you, and races that didn't like each other, helping one would make the other one dislike you as well. And the amount of dislike depended upon their relationship with that race that you were being good with or bad with versus yours. So it was this really complex thing of trying to balance out, you know, do I want to make someone like me again? You know, and it had this little gauge that would show you how close you were to, you know, going from neutral to being liked to being disliked and then your ultimate goal was to win the game by getting, I think, 5 or 6 people to be your allies. That's how the game was won. Or if you ended up, you know, having too many that disliked you, you would lose the game. I had a lot of things going, and I might revisit that and maybe go back to the old style of, you know, top over combat with, you know, the scrolling screen and the one-on-one ship, but then have a smaller fleet probably. But
sounds a little bit like Drox Operative, if you don't mind me saying so, because you have that kind of in Drox Operative, you sort of have that you're just one ship in a 4X being played around you. But one of the ways you can possibly win is to get all of the races to ally with each other.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is really awesome when it happens.
Yeah.
Really, really awesome. Now that sounds great, especially the randomized story elements, because like, if like someone made Starflight, but like the story was a little different each time, I probably would have played it twice as much.
Yeah, exactly. The same thing with Star Control 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that idea. I love that idea, and I'm 100% behind it. So let's start to wrap up. We usually try and remember to ask this of our guests. Besides the game that you are making, are you playing anything right now?
Probably the two I just mentioned, Civilization 6 and XCOM 2. Those are the two that I've been playing most recently. So, but I haven't played much of anything else, in the last 3 or 4 months. So, those are my 2 favorite games right now.
I still need to buy 6. I keep wanting it to come down.
I liked it. I liked 5 too because I didn't like the stackable units. I never liked that because it was terrible.
Stacks of Doom. Yeah.
Yeah.
4 is still my favorite. Sorry.
Well, you like stacks then?
I do.
Well, it's not saying it's bad necessarily, just not for the playstyle.
Yeah, exactly. I like the more. I have to be more careful about where I place things, and with Civilization 6, it makes a big difference because you've got the tiles now mean something.
Cities expand and whatnot, right? So tiles actually matter.
Yeah, and then you got districts, and it's.
Yeah, I kind of want it just for that alone, because one thing that's always bugged me about Civilization, it's like, why does it say just one tile? It's a city, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
So I really like that idea. Spaz, what about you? What have you been playing?
Oh, well, I've been playing a roguelite called Monster Slayers, which is it's pretty interesting. You choose one of these classes of fantasy warriors or clerics or rogues, whatever, and send them into multiple dungeons with the main goal of killing off 3 bosses. Now, being that it's a roguelite, you're going to die a lot. You're going to fail more often than not.
Oh, yeah.
I've actually played, I'd say, about 60 games or so, and I've won about 3 of them.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a roguelike.
Yeah. Permadeath. But you do have some meta going on where if you fail... Well, it's that you have a couple things going on there. You have persistent skills that you can... You earn fame, and then you use those fame points in order to buy skills that upgrade your further runs. But you also have the equipment that you take in with you. If your character dies, then that equipment is left behind for the next people to possibly take up and run the dungeons again. Funnily enough, if your character survives and they graduate from the Hero Academy, then they take that equipment with them as a graduation present.
That's pretty great. Yeah, I've been meaning to pick that one up. Probably will eventually. Once it's on, like, super sale. Because you know me, I gotta play all the roguelikes.
Before I forget, I did have one possible suggestion for the game. Thought I had was hero characters of some sort, or officers, to use the term.
Ooh.
Maybe in some of these encounters, you could potentially find an officer that would give a small bonus to, a type of weapon, perhaps, or you can assign them kind of like in base slots, or not. And then that would give you, they don't necessarily have to be all that powerful, but having a few of them in your fleet, you could spread them between your ships and maybe have bonuses where you need them. Maybe one of them gives a bonus to your fighters because they're squadron leader. Something to that effect.
I actually like that.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Maybe find them on the crash shuttles that you find on the planets.
Yeah, or in derelicts. Maybe an officer might join you because
randomly would join. Yeah, you did, because what you can do is there's when you do an encounter, you can get a perfect score, which means you didn't lose any guys. You could take damage without losing the guy, so you didn't lose any crew. You still have whatever you came with, and you have no rooms got destroyed, and you put out all the fires. That's called a perfect score. And maybe in that scenario, if you did that, maybe you get a person that would want to join you.
Ooh,
that would actually be cool.
That's a great idea. And they could be like your admiral or something.
Yeah, This is why you have the community help you build a game. So, yeah.
No, I love hero characters in games like this. I think like games like Conquest, Frontier Wars, for example, is made all the better for the admirals and heroes and whatnot that you can add to your fleets.
Yeah, I might have to bump that up into the queue then.
I mean, even in this case, it could just be something like you get an officer who's not necessarily an admiral, or even, you know, just a little more experienced than your typical crew member, and maybe they give a small bonus, like a 5% bonus to lasers if you assign them to a ship.
Yeah, and if the ship gets destroyed in battle, guess what happens to the guy?
Exactly. Yeah.
Bye bye. Huh. I like that idea actually. Very good idea.
Sorry, I was replying to someone on YouTube. All right, let's wrap it up then.
Okay.
Folks, next week on the show, we're not sure yet because the guest I offered the date to is not confirmed. So we might have a plan B topic, not sure yet. It'll go on the calendar once we're sure one way or another. But on Thursday, we are going to return to the amazingness that is Deep Rock Galactic. You might have seen us stream this a couple of weeks ago. We already planned to stream it tomorrow, and we loved it so much, we're like, let's just do it again. You know, because it is so good.
So much fun.
So good.
So much fun.
Even in its broken-ass alpha state, pre-alpha state right now, it's so great. It's so great.
It's still in pre-alpha. It's not even in early access yet.
Yeah.
Not officially anyway. So, yeah.
It's so good, you guys. So that's on Thursday. So, Walter, I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking about your game. Folks, the game again, Starfleet Armada Rogue Adventures. It is on Steam for $10. And for $10, you get potentially hundreds and hundreds of hours of game, because this thing is huge. Huge.
And, yeah, it's worth mentioning. The manual is over 100 pages.
100 pages.
And it is worth it. It is worth it to actually read through it.
Just download the manual and read some of it and go and read some of that, because you can do that right from Steam. And if you're like, this speaks to me, then get it. Just get it. Don't even wait for a sale. It's $10. God damn it. Just get it. Don't even wait for a goddamn sale. That's easily impulse territory, right there. You'll get so much gameplay out of this. Absolutely. But yeah, Walter, again, thank you so much for joining us. Spaz, thanks as always for being an awesome co-host. And for everyone who tuned in, thank you for watching and listening. We will see you next week. Have a great night. Bye-bye.